You shouldn't have to rely on, and people don't want to have to rely on other people to get around in their life and where
Look,
they need to go.
we
So,
all crave independence, right? Regardless. So, to
yeah,
have that and be able to move freely around your own city where you live would do amazing things for those that haven't, in the past haven't had that ability to do that. So it's definitely a very good thing for them. We
yeah,
need
yeah, for sure, for sure. And look, that's what we're trying to achieve by doing this. So.
The Navigating Disability podcast often discusses topics including disability, injury, mental health, and mentions of sensitive issues such as trauma and suicide. Listener discretion is advised. Please take care while listening. Welcome to the Navigating Disability podcast, where we explore the unique journeys, challenges, and triumphs of people living with disability. I'm joined by my co-host Jen Abbott and our very special guest Robbie Phelan. Robbie is a passionate advocate and leader in the world of transport accessibility and inclusion. In today's episode, we'll dive into Robbie's journey, the work he's doing to make the world more accessible, and how we can all contribute to creating more inclusive spaces for people with disabilities. Whether you're a person with a disability, an ally, or just someone wanting to learn more about navigating the world of accessibility, you're in the right place. So grab your headphones and let's dive into the insightful conversation with Robbie Phelan. Welcome, Robbie.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Appreciate you having me today. Looking forward
No
to it.
problem. And I will start this by saying there was a very unfortunate incident yesterday up in Brisbane. So I will put in a trigger warning that it does involve death, but it's just come to me now, which is why I thought, speaking to you, it's actually really important that we bring it up. Yesterday, we had a man in a wheelchair who was hit by a train and
Oh,
he
wow.
died. We
Oh,
don't know
God.
the events leading up to that, so it could be anything. But I think it's really important to talk about that now with you being such an expert in accessibility for transport. Can you tell me a little bit about how your involvement started with disability?
Yep. So first of all, that incident yesterday sounds heartbreaking. Yeah, I actually haven't heard anything about that, but that's terrible. Yeah, really feeling for the family and the friends of that person. God, yeah, what a shocking situation. How I got involved in disability. So been a little bit of a journey. So back in 2017, I sort of created an innovation that was aimed around public transport safety, first of all. So it was essentially to stop people falling off the train platform and onto the tracks, because there's, lots of recorded incidents of people, prams rolling off train platforms, people stumbling off, people with disabilities, falling onto the tracks, a whole wide range of incidents, which in some cases can unfortunately lead to death. That started in 2017. And then I sort of went around the country presenting this innovation that I'd come up with. And as I sort of started to get along the journey, like as it progressed, I sort of had a bit of a team helping me and all that. We started to realize that people with disabilities face such a wide variety of challenges when they catch public transport. So, from that, we sort of worked out, okay, well, these are the challenges that people with disability face. This is something it doesn't really sit well with us. It's not quite right. And it's something that we want to try and help and do something about. So the invention kind of went from a fence that stopped people falling off the train platform and onto the tracks to a fence that stops people falling off the platform and onto the tracks, with also an accessibility ramp to help people with in wheelchairs, mobility scooters, people with prams, the elderly, or anyone that may struggle to navigate the gap between the train and the platform on their own. Yeah, so we wanted to create something that would help people board independently. So before that, I guess before 2017, I probably hadn't had a lot of involvement with people with disabilities. But yeah, it wasn't until I sort of got involved in this field and I realized, and I became, acutely aware of all the challenges. And it's one of those things, the more that you know about it, the more you want to make a difference, because it's pretty horrible, some of the challenges that people face.
And that's really imperative what you just said. Not having the experience of disability, you actually don't realize what they face on a daily basis. So I'm really interested to understand, if you didn't have that background, that lived experience, how did you come up with this invention?
Yeah, so I guess I've always sort of had public transport safety in my mind. Unfortunately, my uncle, my mum's brother, when he was 31, I think, he got hit by a tram and lost his life, leaving a pub in Melbourne. So that's, I guess there's a bit of family trauma that's come along with that. And it was before I was born. But, obviously you grow up, hearing lots of stories about Colin and, what a good bloke he was and all these sort of things. It's a situation where you've got trams and you've got trains that weigh tons and tons, and you've got these scenarios where people can fall in front of them, which was just, something that never really sat well with me. And that's kind of why I got involved in the field. And I sort of, started thinking about what can I do to try and help this situation. And then, that just sort of started me down the rabbit hole, I guess. And it's just evolved over time completely. So, that's probably how I got involved. It wasn't from a disability point of view. It was from a family trauma point of view. But it just led me down this path. And then, now I'm, well and truly aware and, looking to try and help this issue.
But it also, even though it may not be a lived experience of disability, it's actually, though, a very, as you said, trauma-based incident that's now highlighted to you what disabled people face on a daily basis. And for those people that don't know, in Melbourne, they do have trams. I did live in Melbourne for many years. We don't have trams up here. But even looking at that, I'm just thinking about the new tram stops in Box Hill, where the platforms are raised so people can go directly onto the trams, which is great, but that's obviously not everywhere throughout the system. So what is your background, Robbie? What qualifications do you have to be able to say, well, I'll build this ramp to help people get onto a tram?
Yeah, so just to sort of take you back a little bit there. So as you sort of mentioned about the Box Hill tram stops, which, people in wheelchairs, mobility scooters, and a range of disabilities can board independently and easily. That's because the tram stops are built at the same height as what the tram is, which is 29 centimetres above the road, right? The problem that we face here in Melbourne is that the trams share the road with cars. So those stops are really good in spaces where they can do them, but a lot of the roads, where I live, there's trams with really narrow roads. So if you were to put one of those tram stops in, then cars wouldn't be able to drive in the left lane. So there's nothing that the government can do about that in terms of building those stops, those what they call super stops or level access stops in those locations, because then it completely blocks the traffic. So what happens is people wait on the curb as the tram will come in. Cars stop, people cross the road, get up onto the tram. But what that means is there's now a 29 centimetre step up from the road to the tram. So if you're in a wheelchair or a mobility scooter, or you've got a pram, or you're elderly, or whatever it may be, you physically can't board at those stops. So that's where the issue lies with the trams in Victoria. And that's where the innovation that we've created helps that. It sort of streamlines into the road, and which I can get into further. I've sort of danced around the question a little bit. Sorry, Kate.
Mitigating that risk as well, just with finding solutions for everyone. The original solution doesn't work, so you found something that actually does, which is amazing. Yeah.
Oh, correct. Thank you. Well, I mean, it's pretty unfair that if you've got let's say you live point A and you want to get to point B and you're in a wheelchair, and your only way of getting there is by tram, well, you might have to go to point C to find a tram stop that you can actually get up onto the tram, and then go to point D, get off, and then go back to point B, wherever you needed to end up. I don't think I got my letters right, points there, but,
but we get the point. We get it.
You get the point. But it's just completely unfair that people with disabilities can't access transport like everybody else can, which is what we're trying to solve. But just to go back a bit, Kate, my background is I'm actually a carpenter. So I sort of don't really have much of a background, like much of an engineering background or anything like that. But I just created a couple of inventions, I guess, in 2017 that have brought me on this journey. And then now I do this full time. I subcontract out a lot of the work to mechanical engineering companies and electronic companies who build these ramps. So I guess that's a bit about me, but Yeah, so just to answer your question, it's not like I've got a degree in this. It's just from what I've developed by having my business.
You're so humble when you say that, but you've done such a great thing for a community that would otherwise not be able to have full accessibility to these things. So you need to pat yourself on the back because you're very like,
Oh, thank you. I've had a lot of help. I mean, it's not just been me. Like, there's been a lot of people that have helped me along the journey, and
but there has to be someone that has the vision.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I suppose. But
we'll pat you on the back.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it.
And what I really love is, whilst this podcast is navigating disability, you're actually mentioning so many other people, the elderly, I can't remember who else you said now, the mobility scooters,
prams,
mums with prams. It's not just about disability, it's about accessibility for the whole community. So what have you come up with? I'm really interested now, for these trams that are 29 centimetres off the ground and you can't put in the smart stops. What is the alternative?
Yep. So the alternative is we've built a ramp that actually rebates into the road. So the top of the ramp is essentially part of the road. So there's no impact to cars that go over it. But then once that tram comes in, the ramp will sense that the tram's coming in, and there's a sign, which is like a speed sign, that'll change to stop. So cars will stop back of that ramp, and that ramp will lift up from the road to the tram, meaning that, you know, you can wait there in a wheelchair, and then that ramp will lift up, you can board, and then as soon as that tram starts to leave, that ramp will lower back down into or part of the road, and cars will drive over it again.
Similar to buses where for disability, where they lower, when they open the doors, the platform lowers for the wheelchair to get on.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
They're very similar. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. And what's the take up on this? You know, when you talk to government, because obviously it's government that's going to be saying yes or no, and do they determine which stop gets the ramp, or how's it working in real life at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. The state government here in Victoria have invested, so first they invested a chunk of money to build a train and a tram prototype. So we built a prototype of both, where we had a range of people with, a variety of disabilities come and trial our ramp. And then from then, there's been further development with our tram ramp, which is actually getting put into Maidstone facility here in Victoria. It's like a new tram facility that's being built where they test a heap of things and put in innovations and all this sort of stuff. So by about June this year, the ramp will be in Maidstone, where they'll drive trams up to it, test it in 50 degrees, probably put snow on it, test it, do all these sorts of things. And then once that happens, they'll hopefully start putting them in different tram routes throughout Melbourne. I know Route 59, which is Airport West of the city, is one that's been spoken about, which has a lot of curb stops, which would probably be a great location to begin with. But that's sort of the process and where we're at the moment. Hopefully by this time next year.
How much is it to install a ramp like that per stop?
Well, it's a bit of I don't want to sound like a politician when I answer this, but it's a bit of a difficult question to answer because
it depends on different.
It depends on every situation. So it depends on, if, let's say, the state government said, all right, we want to put 20 in along Route 59, then okay, we mass produce 20, the cost goes down, everything like that. Or if they just say, we want to put one in, then it's, the cost per unit will go up. It depends on the width of the road. The width of the road changes the length of the ramp, which changes the gradient. It gets pretty, I don't want to get too technical and put you guys to sleep, but there's a whole heap of factors that go into it. So put it this way, it's not more than the government can afford. It's not anything ridiculous. There's lots more money being spent on things that don't help us.
Beneficial to the community. We'll say that.
Let's not open that can of worms, please.
That's a whole other podcast.
We might never get off it. So you've talked a lot about the trams.
Yep.
How does that then work for the trains and the buses?
So the trains are completely different innovation. So, different and similar. But so the train, it sits on top of the train platform and will just automatically adjust to the train that's coming in. So here in Melbourne, we have, on average, you have a 9 centimetre step up from the platform to the train. So our ramp is actually built at that, a little bit less, but around 8.5, 9 centimetres high, sits on top of the platform and will just automatically adjust. But also, if you get a different type of train coming in that's a different height, or you get a train that's a different width, you might have a train that's packed leaving the MCG, or a train that's empty, which changes the height. Whatever happens that's making the gap between the train and the platform different, that ramp will just automatically find it and adjust to it. So it just means that every time the train comes in, there will no longer be a gap between the train and the platform, which would mean that, yeah, if you're in a wheelchair, mobility scooter, as I said, with a pram, elderly, you can just board independently. So currently here in Melbourne, what happens is if you need help getting onto the train, you wait at the end of the platform. As the train will come in, the driver will get out. He sets up a manual ramp, helps you up, packs up the manual ramp, gets back in the train and leaves, which all sounds like it might work well, but once you dive a bit deeper into it, there's so many things that are just outdated with the system. You have, first of all,
work, health and safety. I can think of time. I can think there's all these different things of why completely. That's so old school.
Completely. And the main thing is that people don't have independent access. Like if you're like me, sometimes you have days where you're having a bad day for whatever reason. You don't want to talk to anyone. You just want to get on the train with your headphones in on your own. You don't want to have to wave down the driver. You don't want to have to ask him to help you up or her to help you up. You don't have to, all these sort of things. And it wasn't until we actually had our testing day, which I mentioned earlier, where we had, all the people with a variety of disabilities come and test the ramp, that we heard all these horror stories. And one of the common horror stories that was spoken about was, pretty much, I reckon, honestly, about 80% of the people this had happened to. So let's say that they get on the tram at the start of a line, right? They're waiting at the end of the platform. Train driver gets out, sets up the ramp, helps them up. Okay, where do you want to get off? Yep, I'm getting off in 3 stops time. No worries. Train driver leaves. Between those 3 stops, let's say he gets a call about something and, his mind suddenly becomes occupied with something else. They get to that 3 stops time and the train driver's forgotten about that person. Yep. And that person can't get off the train on their own and they can't access the train driver. It's not like you can just speak to the train driver. So they're stuck on that train and they end up going all the way to the city. And that train might go all the way to the city and then change lines and go on another line. So they might be stuck on that train for hours, not being able to get off. When they were planning on getting off in 3 stops time, they might have had work they needed to get to. They might have had a friend they're catching up for coffee with, appointments, whatever it is, and they spend hours stuck on this train. And when I heard that story for the first time, and then I heard it multiple times in the day, I just thought, wow, that's something that I'd never really thought about. And your average person wouldn't think about that or wouldn't know that happens. But that there is the main reason why independent access is so important. You shouldn't have to rely on, and people don't want to have to rely on other people to get around in their life and where they need to go.
We all crave independence, right? Regardless. So, to have that and be able to move freely around your own city where you live would do amazing things for those that haven't, in the past haven't had that ability to do that. So it's definitely a very good thing for them.
Yeah, for sure. And look, that's what we're trying to achieve by doing this.
And we've spoken a lot about Melbourne, Victoria. How does that then translate to New South Wales or to Queensland or the other states?
Yeah, well, there's actually pretty much the same problem in each state. They just have different dimensions with their platforms and different types of trains and all that. But the underlying issue is predominantly the same. New South Wales are probably the most advanced in the country in terms of their safety and their accessibility. They have trains that are smarter. They've invested a lot more money in transport. But, it's funny, like at the moment, I've late last year sent through a quote to South Australia to take a ramp to one of their platforms and put it there. So we're going through that process at the moment. I've had a lot of dialogue with Queensland, with New South Wales. So it's pretty much a nationwide thing. And, I've had multiple online meetings with, New York, Boston, LA. Who else is it? Anyway, not to name drop or anything, but I guess the point is that it's not just an issue here in Melbourne, it's an issue worldwide. A lot of networks around the country and worldwide just aren't accessible.
Yeah.
So,
and are you the only company doing this, or are there other companies out there?
Yeah, I'm the only company. There's a couple of companies that have that are trying to solve the same issues in different ways, I guess, with sort of different innovations. Obviously, mine, we've each got our patents or our patents. So our innovations are quite different. But yeah, in terms of the way my ramp works, yeah, we're the only one. But yeah, I can't really speak for these other companies. I'm not sure how they're tracking or anything like that. But I know that there are a few people that are thinking about this issue and trying to solve it as well.
You don't realize how much of an issue it is until you speak to someone like you, or you speak to the disabled community. It wouldn't have even entered my head.
No, and I was just about to say that. I wouldn't have even thought about the issues getting onto a tram. Or
we can stand up and get off whenever we want. So you don't think about that until you're in that situation and you're sitting there going, how the hell do I get off this train?
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And it's just one of those things that's so spot on. But I guess if you sort of think about it, we've probably all caught a train at one time in our lives where we've stepped over that gap and thought, oh, that's pretty big. That's pretty scary. Imagine I fell down there.
Or when you've got a toddler, when they don't want to be in their pram and you're navigating that. I've been there. So,
fortunately for me, I'm a couple of years away from having kids, so I haven't been through that yet.
But you won't need to, because
you'll have the whole problem solved.
You'll be fine.
Yeah, fingers crossed. But it's amazing how many, when you do a presentation and people say the same thing. Oh my God, I never realized what these people go through.
And the amount of aha moments you'd be providing in that one sitting would be phenomenal.
Well, it's not really me. It's sort of just from the feedback from from the users. Yeah, because it blew my mind away as well. Just what people go through. Yeah.
So if people are listening to this at the moment, how do they get behind you? And by that I mean, how do they get these ramps? And we're not just specifically talking about your ramps. How do we make the government listen that this is what they need to have access to their community?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think just having a voice is the main thing. There's people getting behind this sort of thing and supporting it, not only in the disability community, but just in the general community can really make a difference. Obviously, I've been pushing for what I start 2017, it's 8 years now, to try and get this going. And like anything with government, you can imagine how long of a journey it's been, trying to get funding and all this sort of stuff. So it wasn't until 2022, 23 that I managed to get some funding. And the government, they've been supportive. We've built the ramps and we're taking them to Maidstone and we're going to South Australia. But there's definitely more support that's needed. The state government here in Victoria is very broke from COVID. So trying to get any money has been a massive challenge, which has been quite frustrating because, we had all this momentum that's sort of come to a halt here in Victoria I'm talking about the train ramp in particular. But we've, as you can imagine, I've been hounding the government trying to get more funding to continue this. It's just, sort of fallen on deaf ears a little bit, which has been frustrating. So I guess if people were to support it and really get behind it, it would really help in getting this going. Like anything, if you get enough people, marching in the same direction, then hopefully it can make them, sort of allocate some money towards this.
So what does that support look like?
So at the moment we're looking to gather more funding. Are you talking about what the support looks like from the government or from people?
No, from people. How can they support you to get these ramps into public transport?
Again, that's probably a good question. Maybe if they can, I was thinking about starting maybe a petition or something like that, but it's probably not good coming from me, because people think it's an invested interest. But I guess it's a tough question because, having support from people with disabilities, there are, like, for example, here in Victoria, people were rallying. Sydney Road shut their train station and people in wheelchairs, people with disabilities couldn't access public transport. So there was these rallies that were all over the news and people were signing petitions and rallying to get Sydney Road made accessible. stuff like that has been really helpful. Maybe just for the everyday person getting behind those ideas and supporting in that way. But for me, I guess for my train ramp, I'm not too sure. I might have to sort of think about maybe starting something like that, or
reaching out to their members of parliament. Would that help? The government, the local government?
Yeah.
That does help, and I have had a lot of people do that and support me in that regard. Sending letters to Parliament, all that sort of thing. But again, that kind of fell on deaf ears because of the lack of funding that's available at the moment. But I think that's definitely a great idea. You've inspired me to maybe set up some sort of thing that people, if they're listening and they want to help, get behind it.
Absolutely.
And we definitely will, because it's so important. It is, because I never knew this even existed in Melbourne until I've spoken to you this morning. So it's something that needs to be heard and it needs to be communicated, because it's such a help to those that would necessarily not have access to the, mainstream transport.
And not only a help, it's actually a right. People have a right to access their community.
Absolutely. In 2002, an organisation called it's called DSAP, that stands for Disabled Standards of Accessing Public Transport. So they made a 20-year agreement with networks around Australia that by the end of 2022, all public transport had to be accessible, fully accessible. So the governments have had 20 years to navigate these issues. And, we get to the end of 2022 and only about 450 out of 1,800 tram stops are accessible. Same with train stations. And that's a nationwide problem. So it is a right. When you say it's a right, it's a complete right. And it's something that should have been solved. So, I guess the challenge for me has been, one voice, or, myself and, people that have been supporting me, but it's a small voice compared to governments and trying to get things through. So trying to find a way to get momentum behind it, like we sort of just spoke about, I think is a fantastic idea.
I don't know if you remember, Jen, but we, out of all the podcasts that we've done, the one thing that keeps coming up is, it's not my disability that disables me, it's the environment around me.
Absolutely.
And that's exactly what you're talking about here. Yeah. The disability isn't stopping them from doing anything. It's the ability to get there, or how they get there, that's actually stopping them. So,
and it's diminishing their independence and their potential to be out in the community and doing great things, because people just look at disability in more of a negative way, where it's not a negative at all. I'm just trying to think of the word, because we throw around normal, so their norm, but what is normal? Normal to me is different to what normal would be for yourself or Robbie. But we need to be able to have an inclusive normal in the community. And I think that's key.
Without a doubt.
Absolutely.
So we're very happy to support you in any way that we can, Robbie. So please let's put our thinking caps on, and we'll go out to our audience and ask for their thoughts as well on how we can move this forward. You said before that you started this in 2017, but you didn't really get any take up until 2022. I think that's
correct. Yeah.
That's a long time to keep pushing. How did you do that? Why did you do that? You're really hitting your head against brick walls, we can say. What did you have in you that kept you going?
It's a great question. To be honest, I think I just made a really conscious decision in 2017 that this was something I was going to go all in on.
Yeah.
Just completely all in on. And it was either make or break for me, I felt like. I went out, I got a massive bank loan. I was an apprentice at the time. I wasn't earning any, it was minimum amount of money. And, I was borrowing money off my parents. I was, every cent that I was saving and not paying off these loans, I was putting towards this. And it was a huge investment. Like a lot of my friends were buying houses, when we got to our mid-20s, buying houses and, going on, big holidays and all this sort of stuff. But, all my money was going towards this, because I guess I just really believed that it was something that could work and something that could help people. And I think that going all in at the start and just, saying it's make or break, it didn't give me any choice, so in those moments where you would sort of question it, you would then think, well, no, you're not going to stop now. You're far too deep in.
Yeah,
you've come this far. So yeah, like I remember flying, interstate. I'm not going to say which state it was, but I think it was probably about 2019, probably just before COVID, and did this big presentation, flew myself and my designer over for the day and did this big presentation, and almost just got sort of laughed at, like they pretty much just said, oh, this wasn't what we thought it was going to be, blah, blah, blah. And then, I remember sort of leaving there pretty deflated and, even sent a follow-up email saying thanks, and just got hit with a really blunt response. Like, that was a bit of a low moment, for me. And I guess in that moment, if I hadn't invested, so heavily in it, obviously financially, but also, just with all my energy and my thought, completely, my heart and soul completely occupied, everything I had. Then I guess in that moment, I probably could have given up. That was at a time when it was, so yeah, well, that would have been maybe late 2019. So it'd already been 2.5 years, and I'd been meeting with a lot of people and presenting. So I hadn't got any funding then, and it would have been really easy just to say this is never going to happen. Governments just aren't seeing the bigger picture. They're not going to support me. But yeah, I guess I just found something inside me to keep going, and I did. And then finally, yeah, it paid off, which was just the most amazing feeling you could ever imagine. When I say paid off, it hasn't. No. It's not like the problem solved and people are. There's still a long way to go, but just to see one little bit of, investment in this just was, yeah. Cool. I think from memory, it brought me to tears.
It validates what you've done for the last 3, 4, 5 years. And you know what? What goes around comes around.
Yeah.
And I want you to come and give me a call and say, Kate, those people that fobbed me off back in 2009, guess what? They've just rung me because they need my technology.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's a full circle. I absolutely have no doubt.
And
I would love to do that. I hope that happens.
And the fact that you've persevered through all of that, not coming from a disability background as such, is, second to none, because you are changing people's lives, and I hope you realise that.
Oh, look, I certainly appreciate that. And I guess, and another one of those, those great moments, was when we had our testing day, and, people, some of the feedback that came with it, we had one lady sort of say, this would change my life. This would literally change my life. It would help me get out, go to work and do all these sort of things. And I sort of thought, wow,
that's why
why you do it. If this changed her life, that I'd be on a constant high, just the thought of that you've achieved something and you've helped someone.
And that's what keeps us going. Because I know in our business, we get pumped all the time, but when we get those results for clients and they sit there and they say, Kate, thank you so much. You've changed my life. I forget every other bad result.
Absolutely. Really, and those moments they're few and far between, I guess. So for most people anyway, so you got to really enjoy them. There's a lot of, in the workforce, there's a lot of low moments and a lot of toiling and stuff. So when you get those moments, they're just,
And going back to that knockback, where you were really deflated and you could have given up, would you agree with me that it really comes down to mindset? So you almost were at a fork in the road. You could have given up and gone and got a job and bought your house and gone overseas, or you pulled yourself together and went, I'm not going to let one person derail this. I'm going to go here. So your mindset was so important in determining the outcome.
100%, definitely. I remember thinking back that my first emotion was I was embarrassed. I felt really embarrassed, which I guess looking back, I probably shouldn't have. I was flying around the country trying to present something that would help people. There's nothing to be embarrassed about, even if they didn't see value in it. At first I was embarrassed, and then I sort of remember thinking, okay, well, yeah, you're right. I'm at a fork in the road. I need to do something about this. And I've completely reevaluated the way that we were doing it. You know, some technical things that we went and changed because, okay, well, maybe they don't like it for this, this, and this. Well, let's do it this, and this way instead. And then go back to them. So my mindset was constantly get rejected, go back, change it, go back to them. Hey, I've changed it. Now give me another look. Get rejected again, go back, change it again. Now give me another go, sort of thing. And I just kept doing that. And I guess that's probably why I spent so much money on it as well, because I was constantly getting it redesigned and constantly, you know, altering things until it became something that was feasible and something that they finally went, yep, that looks really good. Like I still remember when I first presented my tram ramp to there's a tram team at the Department of Transport here. So, you know, I was going around to all these tram stops and surveying all this stuff and, you know, created this big design with my design team and had what I thought was a really good innovation to, you know, help people board trams, and presented. And there was this guy that he sort of was listening, and he was really polite and, you know, really well spoken, but he spoke for about 10, 15 minutes straight and just about why this won't work. It won't work because of this. It won't work because of this. And it felt like I was nailed to the wall. Like he just absolutely, you know, didn't give it. He was, yeah, as I said, he was really good, but just in terms of the way it worked, it was no hope. So then from then I went back and I completely changed everything, and then sent him an email saying, hey, I've taken on all your advice. You gave me 10 things. I've fixed all of them. Am I able to have another meeting? He said, yep. Went back, presented to him again, changed everything. And he just goes, yep, sounds good. We'll invest. So then he
How
was the
amazing
one
is that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so he was the one that ended up, you know, tipping in the money to get the prototypes built and get the project started. So I guess there's probably a bit of a lesson in there. Like you after that first meeting with them, I probably could have just stopped and been again deflated, but because you go all in, and I made that decision to go all in years ago.
You believed in it. In your heart of hearts,
Exactly.
you believed in this product and that it was going to make a difference. And I'm going to sound so cliche, but you are like you could be the poster child for the Aussie spirit, because you've, and it's true. I'm probably embarrassing you, Robbie, but there's not enough of you out there that are fighting for, you know, for the disability community. And it is the Aussie spirit, because you have just all the obstacles that have been thrown at you. You're like, no, I still believe in this. I'm going to do it. So it's that self-belief that we all need and we all want and that we all should have. And you're actually putting that and instilling that in people just by this story. So I cannot wait to release this podcast and let our listeners see that just that someone's fighting in their corner.
I really appreciate that. Now, thank you.
That
does mean a lot.
Yeah. And what I'm hearing from your stories is the resilience.
Yeah.
You keep getting knocked back, but you keep coming back. Like you're taking it on board as a positive rather than a negative and doing something with it. We're getting to the end now. What are your hopes for the future? What do you want to see change in not only the disability area, but the whole community access area?
So obviously, yeah, the number one would be around what I'm doing, man, the transport area. The change I want to see is that people can board, you know, trains and trams independently on their own and get to where they need to go without relying on other people. And that's, you know, what we've spoken about. But another change is probably like just people becoming aware of the issues that people face with disabilities. Because as I said earlier, I was naive. Most people are naive about, you know, the things that we spoke about and the challenges that people face. So the more that people are become aware of that, and I'm 100% sure that it isn't just problems they face catching the train and tram. There's a vast, you know, a huge variety of areas in their life where they face similar problems that people are unaware of. So
I'm already thinking of one where we spoke to someone in a wheelchair that couldn't get up the stairs to the lecture theatre at uni.
Well,
had to be carried. You know,
that's exactly
right. Absolutely everywhere. Getting into a shopping centre.
Yeah,
it's everywhere.
Yeah, Absolutely. And even, even more so from getting from, we're talking about, people getting from point A to point B. There's probably, I'm sure there's a whole heap of other challenges that come around, the stigmas that come around, people with disabilities and, such a variety of challenges they face in other ways as well that, I'd love to to become more educated myself about, those other challenges and for the community to sort of, realize that, there's a lot of things that people can do to make the lives of people with disabilities easier.
100%.
Well, you've got our vote. You've got our vote. So anything we can do to support you in Queensland, we'd be more than happy to.
I really appreciate that. I love how you got me thinking about the petition. I probably haven't been asked that question a whole lot. What can I do as an individual to help you? Yeah. It's probably, because I'd sort of seen it as myself and the government were back and forth and obviously
and that you said the more people standing behind you, pushing you forward, you're going to get there a lot quicker.
Definitely.
It's all about the community spirit. That's what it comes down to. It's what they see important, and there's a lot in the disability community that would back you 100%.
So
go away,
appreciate that.
have a think about it.
That's it.
Do a petition or whatever, please send it to us and we can log it with this episode and share it amongst our viewers. Thank you so much for your time, Robbie. We greatly appreciate it and we look forward to catching public transport with your ramps everywhere.
Keep doing what you're doing, Robbie. Don't give up.
Kate. Thanks, Jen. This was really fun. So thanks for having me. Loved it.
No worries. Well, you take care.
No worries. Good luck with the rest of the podcast. Sounds like it's going really well. So thank you.